Welcome to Retirement in Focus with Chris Mediate. Chris helps guide local families on the path toward a successful retirement. Chris and the team at Mediate Financial will help you learn about strategies for creating income in retirement, managing your wealth, and minimizing taxes. Welcome to Retirement in Focus with Chris Mediate.
Welcome to Retirement in Focus with Chris Mediate. I'm Amy Sharp. Chris is the founder of Mediate Financial, located right here in Youngstown, Ohio. You know, we work hard for our money, but come retirement, it's time to make your money work for you. Today, Chris shares some helpful financial strategies to help you do just that and to get you to and through the retirement you want. Chris, it is great to be back with you today. We've got a fun one today.
Yeah, it is.
There might be some singing. There might be some singing.
Are you going to sing?
I know, because
work hard for your money.
Okay, so there's a song here. You work years working, grinding, saving,
That's
and as
right.
Donna Summers once said,
Yes,
she works hard for the money.
that's right.
Okay.
We all do.
I won't start singing, but there was a song there. But you know, once retirement rolls around, it would be nice if our money could work for us. And I think a lot of our viewers are perking up their ears right now. Is this possible?
Yes, it is possible. I mean, there's some things that you need to do to make it possible. We can't be scared to spend our money. Okay, number one, we got to create a healthy savings account, right? That's a healthy nest egg, right? We need to save. That's bottom line, something that we should be doing. We should be saving and trying to save as much as that we can, okay? Secondly, I would say you want to have diversified income sources. So when I talk to people, where's your income coming from? You know, how are you going to be able to afford this? Do you know? Those are the questions you want to ask. How, what, why? You know, where's my money coming from? How's it going to work for me? What am I going to do? That's core. So we want to know where our sources are coming from. We want combinations maybe of guaranteed, some non-guaranteed, but we want to make sure that we are aware where they come. And that leads me to my last point. You want to have a comprehensive income plan that says just that. So when we work as hard as we do for our money, we want to know how to be able to spend it. And that's key. By having an income plan, have it written out, seeing exactly where our sources are coming from, I think it'll make that question a lot easier for people. And I see that very little. Okay, that's one thing I don't see as often as I would like.
Okay, you know, that paycheck is gone, and that's the tough part about retirement.
Right.
You're no longer getting
Scary.
that paycheck every 2 weeks. You can't depend on the bonuses, the raises, things like that. I think just that confidence piece, how do we know that we have saved enough to replace that?
I mean, again, it comes back to understanding your lifestyle, understanding what it is that you're trying to do. What are you using with your money? You know, what are the questions that you want to be able to know how to use it? And I think when you stop to look at, okay, here I am, and here's what's scary to people. This is it. I've done it. It's what I've saved. So again, this just comes back to comprehensive, come back into knowing where those sources are coming from, building that plan, answering the questions the right way. And I think a lot of people just don't know how to spend and use their money. And I think a really good comprehensive plan is what most people need to be able to answer those questions.
Chris, you and I talk a lot on this show about inflation being such a hot topic right now, healthcare needs down the road. Whether we think we're going to need it or not, at some point, healthcare will become a factor.
It is.
And then that begs the question, how do we know if we have saved enough to factor in those two things?
You know, you said inflation, healthcare, okay?
Taxes.
What about market risk?
Not market risk.
Okay, taxes. What would happen if you know, here you are 6 months out to your portfolio and you weren't watching your risk level and the market corrected and you were like, oh my gosh, you know, what happens? What happens to my income plan if the market corrects it? If that's a question you don't know the answer to, if you don't know what will happen, you have a problem, okay? That needs to be remedied so that you can address that question. Same thing as you said with inflation. What happens if inflation comes up? Do I know where I'm getting my money from? Healthcare. One of the biggest expenses we're going to see that I see, Amy, that a lot of people don't plan out at the beginning. They underestimate the cost of healthcare over their lifetimes. That's a big one. And we also talked about taxes. And do we know? Most people that I run into don't even understand tax brackets, let alone taxes. And those are things that could really cause problems for you later, because the last thing that happens if you don't find out, you find out when it's too late.
Too late.
Okay, so those are the things that could really impact you. So here's my point. Have an answer to those questions, because that's Now I know. Now I have a sound answer. I can go on living my life knowing, hey, there I know. I know exactly what would happen if those events happen. That's protecting and being aware.
Chris, this doesn't really necessarily seem like a DIY project. I know a lot of people do a great job budgeting during their working years,
Right.
but you get to retirement, there's so much that goes into it. I can't imagine it's a good idea to do it by yourself.
Well, here's the thing, today it's falling more and more on our shoulders. So if you think about the old days, that's why we say the 21st century retirement, where we are today, what happened with our grandparents, right? It was all pension, Social Security income. They didn't rely nearly as much on their savings, right? Today, it's all on us pretty much to fund our retirement. So when you stop to look at, oh my gosh, this is what I need to do, the questions come out. I mean, as we talk about later, I've got 3 things that I will ask that do-it-yourselfer. But if you really start putting this together, you want to look at, how different it is and understanding, can I do it myself? And do I know what to do with my nest egg? Do I know how to build a proper income plan? And that's unfortunately so different than we are today because, again, it's 401ks, IRAs, and not so heavily on pensions like we did in the old days.
Okay, great information. We're off to a great start and more to come. Up next, what are those 3 big questions you should be able to answer before you retire? Chris will let you know in just a moment. Stay with us.
You have a club for every scenario, a driver for the long holes, wedges to get you over the hazards, and a putter for when you need a touch of finesse. What about your retirement? Will you have enough to play the back 9? Call to set your 15-minute phone visit today and let's find out. Get a second set of eyes on your retirement plan.
Glad you're with us today and welcome back. There are 3 big questions we should be able to answer before we retire. Let's find out what those 3 are. I know, Chris, you've got plenty of insight on this, so let's start at the very beginning.
Yeah,
Number
let's
1.
start with basic with the 3 questions. These are big ones. And it sounds easier said than done, but what age? What age do you want to retire? And when I ask that question, sometimes people haven't given it enough thought, but that's really important. It has to be well thought out because you need to know the timing of your distribution plan, how much more time you have to save, am I saving the right amount of money, how do I claim Social Security, different things like that, which leads us into our next question, Amy.
Okay, so number 2, I know we're going through the 3 big questions that you should
big
ask
ones.
yourself. So what is it?
So when do I claim Social Security benefits? And, we're so dependent now on Social Security. As we mentioned before, we don't have the pensions. Our retirements are different. A lot of it's falling onto ourselves. So that Social Security benefit claiming strategy matters because in most cases, the first thing anybody does when they retire, they want to replace that income. They want to replace that paycheck. First thing they do is they want to turn that Social Security on. The question is it right? Do you know the timing of your Social Security? Do you know when you should do it, how you should tie it back into taxes, how you should tie it back into how I'm distributing from my other assets? Because this is a big question of how does my claiming strategy actually fit, which then ties us back into the age, right? So if we're retiring and I'm 62 and I'm saying, I'm 62, the question is now, do I know that? Is that the best source for me to do that where I'm now taking Social Security at 62? Maybe it's not, okay? And so I think, again, when we understand and how to go about claiming Social Security, what a big piece that it plays in our financial plan, okay? That's question 2.
Yeah,
Sure.
and I know we've got one more to go, but I want to follow up on that because I
Yep.
think about Social Security and how many different questions there are to answer and
there
where
is.
do I start and how do I know I'm working with the right person to guide me along? I don't just go to the Social Security office.
I mean, that's what some people do, but again, how? What does it fit? So Social Security is going to look at, what are they going to say when you talk to the office? Oh yeah, you're eligible. And if you look at this off your spouse, you could go ahead and take it. The problem is we're not really necessarily sure that that is the optimal time to claim. So when you say, when you're working with somebody, is somebody discussing the Social Security strategy? It is in my office, in our planning process, when we're going through income plans, Amy, it's one of the very first things that I'll do. I'll bet boring, because everybody thinks, Social Security, but when I go through the importance of how am I getting the most optimization, how am I getting the most money out of the Social Security system, but most importantly, I'm thinking always about how it ties into the rest of my distribution plan, the rest of my income plan, and most importantly, my spousal survivorship plan if we're married. That matters. When you claim matters. And I think a lot of people take that for granted.
Okay, we've gone through question number 1, question number 2. We promised 3, so here it is.
The big one. It's underestimating healthcare. So healthcare is a big one. I see it all the time. We hear about healthcare, we hear that there's cost, but I think we fail to plan for it. And we don't realize how expensive healthcare really is and what that can do to our financial plan. We're talking about sometimes basic medical. We think, we have our Medicare, we have our supplement, or we have our Advantage plan, and I'm not going to be worrying so much about those costs. But remember, those costs go up, prescriptions go up. And so I need to learn, am I prepared for healthcare? Do I have my income plan that says, hey, if I have a cost go up, if my healthcare costs continue to go up, is my plan financially sound to be able to handle that? Because again, keep coming back to the worry that people have is, am I gonna outlive my money? Or am I prepared for all the things that happen? And again, this just keeps coming back with healthcare, Social Security claiming, your age, all of this factors in. That's why I say those are 3 big questions that need to start, because those are foundational ways to start creating a proper comprehensive income plan. And not to mention, we didn't even get to portfolio risk, and all of these things that can impact our financial plans are still out there, Amy.
We have just skimmed the surface, and I really think it all comes down to you do need to answer so many questions.
Yeah.
You do need to have that plan and finding the proper guidance. And I know that's where you guys come in.
Yeah, we do. That's the thing. One of the first things we do in our office is we're setting, right? When I say, look, what's your number? Everybody's going to hear me say that over and over again, but that's dictating lifestyle. That lifestyle, that's going to dictate age, right? When someone says, hey, I want to retire at 62. Okay, so what does it take, right? That's where we got to look. Where's the income coming from? So now we could say, okay, 62, that's our start. How does my Social Security claim fit in there, right? Am I covering healthcare? Where is my money going to come from? And that is, how many other advisors are out there that may be just looking at your investments, right? So you make sure that all of that is being addressed, because there's more than just a portfolio. And I say this a lot, a portfolio is not a plan, okay? A portfolio is a means to help you achieve your goals. You need to lay out exactly how this is all going to play out. And it starts foundationally knowing how I'm replacing that paycheck, where from, and to make sure it's insulated from all those things we talked about. You should be able to answer those questions.
Thank you so much, Chris. And straight ahead, Chris explains the 3 worlds of money. That's next in Retirement Clearview. Stay with us.
Everybody needs a plan. If Carol's ever going to retire, she needs a plan. So does Bob. Jim and Susan, they need a plan. And Puddles over there, yeah, he's going to need a plan too. You? Yeah, you probably need a plan. Whoever you are, whatever you do, you can use a plan for retirement. We can help.
In today's Retirement Clearview, Chris explains the 3 worlds of money. Chris?
Thanks, Amy. And let's get to this week's Retirement Clearview. So let's talk about the 3 worlds of money. And these are, when I'm meeting with clients and we're trying to build a plan, we want to do something that's relatable. So somebody can understand that money could be related and invested differently per your goals. And again, it's the idea of making something intentional, creating a purpose for it. And by allowing us to break up your money into these 3 different worlds, you'd have a pretty good understanding of what we're trying to do. So how your money will actually match to that goal. And I think that's really, really important. So the 3 ways that I really describe it to kind of put this in a relatable term so that you can understand. We talk about the banking world. We'll talk about the Wall Street world, and we'll talk about the insurance world. And what does that really mean? So when we come back and we talk about the banking world, let's just pivot on that. So in my office and in the theory that we put together for our clients, we call them buckets. And it's pretty easy to understand because those buckets are going to align to the different goals of which we're trying to do and how we're building the plan. So our first bucket we might call our protection bucket or our safety bucket. The second bucket we call our contingency, our what if, and I'll explain that. And our third bucket we call our growth or our long-term growth bucket. And remember, when you break those down just like that, it could be very easy to kind of go, okay, now I can visualize how my money's supposed to operate in each goal. So when we talk about safety, emergency, let's talk a little bit about the insurance world. And we'll go backwards here because I think it's really important. If our first bucket we want to call our lifestyle or our protection bucket, that's where you know that you're going to have income. You want it to be protected from all the outside noise, such as market crashes, bad economies, even a death of a spouse. You want to make sure that that income is rock solid so that we can go on and we can have the lifestyle that we dream of. We want to be able to protect that. And that is so important. And what goes in there means we want to isolate that money and we want to make it as safe as possible, because I don't know about you, but many people that I've talked to, I know, do not want any risk on their income. They want to make sure that that income is going to be there, that income is going to be sound, and that it is going to be isolated from all the noise, because they want to be able to go do things in life. They want to travel. They want to go out to eat. They want to be able to have a roof over their head. They want to make sure they can have their transportation taken care of. So that wants to be secure and safe. That is the insurance world, right? We want safety. We want to in there also maybe have the emergency fund to know, again, that it's going to be there when we need it. Then we pivot and we'll flip to this. We call this the banking world. What is banking world when you're looking at worlds of money? What do we think of? We think of income. And in our terms, how we relate that is that's our second bucket. That's our contingent bucket. That is our what if bucket. Why is that important? In prior segments, we talked about inflation. We talked about increasing healthcare costs. And this is where this bucket becomes very relative, is because we want to know, again, where is that extra income going to come? So whether we do it as safe as we possibly can, or what we're doing as part of our overall risk plan is preparing to be able to deliver that income when it is needed most, right? It might not be a huge amount. It might be a couple $100s a month. It could be $300, it could be $500. But in your well drawn out retirement plan or your income plan, you want to have that world taken care of, right? You want to be able to know, if I need an increasing income, am I able to get that? And that is in a relatable term to the banking world. We think of it as income. We think of it like a CD producing income, right? We want it to be there. And last but not least, it's the Wall Street world, right? And how do we relate this? We call this growth. And why are we saying Wall Street? Because everybody relates growth in most cases to the stock market. And so, as you know, as we go down that risk level, we have protection, right, which is safety, no risk. We might have income or the what if bucket, which there might have maybe a little bit lower risk involved, but now you notice I mentioned the word risk. And then third is that growth bucket or the Wall Street world. And why is that important? Because we want that to be there for our futures. We know that we need some semblance of growth. When we start to retire, we realize that there's going to be things thrown at us in life that we have to be able to answer the what ifs. If we're not growing or having growth associated with our entire financial plan, then we can find ourselves in trouble. But as you think and listen to how I lay out those buckets, if you start to realize and we say, okay, where's the bigger part of our risk? And that's in the Wall Street world, right? That's in the stock market. But we realize that's in the growth bucket. That's the percentage based on your personal income plan, your personal investment plan, your personal financial plan, that might be then attributed to the risk. That's the growth. We know that that's the portion that that's the portion of our money that we're taking risk off of. Why is this all important? Because this should be constructed as part of your entire financial plan. If you don't want safety, right, we need to know that. What portion of money is going to be protected? So going through proper risk, proper protections of your money will make a well thought out retirement investment plan. And as that plan fits, we can then visualize in our mind how that is attached to our goal. So come back to the first bucket and say lifestyle. We know that that's going to be safe money. That's going to be protected money. That's going to be where we're going to have emergencies. That's where it's going to be isolated from anything bad that can happen. We want to protect it at all costs. We establish the lower risk bucket or the income bucket, and that bucket in itself, right, is there for the what if. We might not need it now, but say 3 years from now, we know exactly what's going to be turned on. We might know that that income is already established to be there for us. So anytime we need a raise, we know that we're there. And that is going to take on a little different risk than the first bucket. And then we jump over to the risk, and that's going to be on our long-term growth. And that is going to be the portion that we want to put risk on, because we want to try to make that money grow for your future, so that, again, as life has thrown you some curveballs, you're able to be prepared. So that's our 3 worlds of money. And now back to you, Amy.
Thanks, Chris. Still to come, we'll hear directly from you in our Q&A section. Stay with us.
Our generation has always believed that a hard day's work is its own reward. So, for some of us, it's hard to turn off that work switch come retirement. But imagine what can happen when that work switch becomes a life switch. Then you realize that every day in retirement is its own reward. We can help you flip the switch to make work days become life days.
And now it's time to get to some of the questions you have for Chris today. Are you ready to get started on this?
It's my favorite part.
Okay,
Ready.
Let's do it. This one is from Kent in Newcastle, PA. Is it a good idea to have my investments, taxes, and legal documents for my estate all handled by the same firm? This is a great question.
Wow, Kent.
You're perplexed.
You're really getting into, so we're talking about investments, taxes, all our legal documents. Some people, again, is the person that we're talking about practicing law, right? Are they an attorney? Are they doing that? And so if you're getting that all under one umbrella, fantastic, I guess, right? Assuming that you're getting good advice. There's nothing wrong, again, with spreading out who you're talking to and what type of advice, where you're getting it from. So, I think a lot of people put things under one firm. I don't think it's a terrible thing to do. I think it's convenient. Again, assuming that you're getting the proper advice, you're getting the proper investment advice, you're getting the proper tax advice, and you're getting the proper legal advice. And I think that's really critical to do. So yes, you can do it. Do I tell you to recommend to doing it? Again, I think you're going to have to interview that person and make sure that it's acting in your best interest.
Okay, next question from Carl in Canfield. I'm nervous about how much money I have in the stock market. What's the right amount for me to have invested in my early 60s?
Wow. So, okay, we're worried about the stock market. I think that's a very common question that we get. So I guess, Carl, some of the first questions would be what is your plan? What is your financial plan? What is your risk level? And do you know that? We do things at our firm, we call them a risk number, Amy, and it usually will help relate to somebody understanding how much risk and how much their investments are exposed to the stock market. So the first thing I would say is get a proper risk analysis, okay? Because that question, as somebody says, I'm 60 years old. And when I lead into this, I always think, when I'm building a financial plan and we utilize, bucket systems, growth, income protection, growth is always something that we're going to have for our future, which means in most cases, there's some stock market exposure. The question that I would have is when you come back talking about how much exposure you have in the market, are we talking about your income plan, your whole retirement lifestyle, or is there a portion of it? And that might come back to Carl not really truly understanding how his whole financial plan works. So risk is kind of subjective, and it's kind of based on what it is that you're looking for and whether or not it actually fits in your entire financial plan. So again, being 60 years old, doesn't really matter based on your age. It matters how it's going to affect your overall financial plan, your well-being, and your income plan. You need to make sure you know where that risk is at.
Okay, here's another one from Andrea in Boardman. I recently lost my job with a company I've been with for more than 20 years. I'm at a loss as to what I should do with my 401k. Can you help?
Yes, let's start here. That's a really, and I'm sorry you lost your job. But that does happen. We don't know what to do with our 401k plans. And this comes back to, what intention, what is that to me, right? How does that affect me? So when I'm looking at this, is your 401k plan your entire savings? Is it a portion of your savings? So when we're looking about what you should do, again, you want to do a complete analysis of, okay, what does this 401k plan do for me? How is my money invested in my 401k plan? Meaning, again, do I know my risk level, and is it appropriate for me? And that usually will dictate, okay, now that I'm not with my job, do I want to control my money myself now? Do I want to leave it at an employer plan that I no longer have access to, where I'm going to have to go through them in order to do it? And so when we look at having an opportunity to roll that money to an IRA, then it gives us a little bit broader choices, and then we can tailor that, right, so that it fits your overall financial plan, your investment plan, your risk plan, et cetera. So, you want to really, again, evaluate this as part of a plan, because you don't just go, yeah, go ahead and roll it out. You want to make sure, again, you're knowing exactly what you're doing with the money. Make it intentional, make it fit your overall financial plan before you do it.
Okay, here's another one from Tim in Canfield. I'm 62 years old and my mother passed away and left me an IRA with about $600,000 in it. What do I need to know about this account? I don't want to make the wrong move and owe too much in taxes.
Sorry about your mom. $600,000 is a good deal of money. And so when we talk about choices, I think everybody in an IRA is aware, okay? So it's not my, I'm not a spouse now, so now I am a child inheriting $600,000. And you're right for having questions about what to do with it, because if you go ahead, Tim, and take out that $600,000, you're going to end up paying tax on the entire $600,000. In addition, if you are working and earning money, in addition to that. So that's going to get added on. So now, depending on what tax bracket you are in, you could end up paying taxes a lot higher than you would anticipate. So again, that's where getting good qualified advice. This is where that when I'm inheriting money, that tax plan, that income plan, it has to tie together, because you want to determine how you're going to distribute that money. Because let's be real, we got to take that money out, it's got to be gone within 10 years. So if I asked Tim, if he already thinks $600,000 tax on his income now is a lot of money, what if that 600 in 10 years grows to 1.2 million, and then Tim's got to take that money out completely at that income? You talk about paying a lot of taxes. That's where now you've got to go through a proper plan to see what you're going to do with that 600,000, so that you know how to handle it today and don't wait for the future. Get good advice today.
Great advice. Thank you so much. Great insights as always. If you have a question, you can visit the website. We just might use one of your questions on a future show. And don't hesitate to act on the information you've heard today. It never hurts to call, even if it's for a second opinion. Don't wait. Call now. For Chris and the team at Mediate Financial, I'm Amy Sharp. Have a great day and an even better retirement.